take all the tyres off.
Why? Are you going to put them back on?
No, you can do that. No, I want to check all your spoke tensions. Put that on there. So you're going to record me doing all your tyres and not help me? Your ICAN wheels.
We have a lot going on in today's video, which is brought to you by Masterworks, where I'm going to be presenting a lot of details and data to you on these three wheels via an expert mechanic's point of view, 18 different speed tests, with one run in particular telling quite the story, and I'm sure a bit of heckling. So hopefully by the end of this video, you can determine what sort of value you get from a cheap set of Chinese carbon rims like these ICAN Aero 50 discs, valued at 670 USD, versus a more expensive Chinese carbon rim being these new to market Winspace branded Lun, something like that, D45s, which are valued at 1300 USD, which now have a staggered profile. We have 46 millimeters at the front and we have a 54 millimeter at the rear, which is intended to improve handling and steering during crosswind conditions, given the fact most of the rider weight should be on the rear of the bike. And for all those hyper fans out there, we'll be bringing in the predecessor to those wheels over there, the Winspace Hyper 50 millimeters, which are valued at 1200 USD, which you can still buy. So hopefully, in addition to comparing those wheels at the end of this video, you can decide whether it's worthwhile upgrading or spending the $100 USD more for the upgraded version versus the old version.
So it's folded over. So what happens is your inner tube will start to eat away in that corner and you'll get punches. Schwalb.
Say it with
Schwalb.
That's it.
If you use one of those, they clip in perfectly. So that's a really good example to use those instead. Cost a little bit more, but they are way better.
Pro tip.
In regard to nipples for me, when you look at the nipples and how they connect to the rim, they run a shallower nipple section. That's what it seems. I just put a vernier on it before.
On the new one?
Yeah. If you have a longer or a normal nipple, like what you've got on the ICANs, you have an aerodynamic disadvantage in effect to obviously anything that's protruding here. You haven't got that aerofoil working for you as well. That's an ICAN. Conventional nipple. Love a bigger nipple. Look, the main thing from my perspective is working on them day in, day out. It doesn't really bother me if I have to take the tyres and tubes and everything off, but here's a great example.
So the speed test, where I feel like I have one juicy item to share with you. And if you're after info on how I do these speed tests, info below, but just know everything is the same, right down to the same tyres and tubes. The only thing that is different are the wheels, sometimes my average wattage per segment, and I do try and pick the lowest wind day possible, ideally zero wind. There was a little bit of wind that crept in on a couple of these segments. As you'll see from these screenshots that I take before each run, I prioritize the hill climb because it's nicely protected. So speed test number one is roughly a 1.5 kilometer climb, average gradient of 3.6% at 350 watts times 3 runs on each wheel. Interestingly here, the ICANs just outperformed both Hypers.
So that has a stuck on tubeless tape.
Yep.
Just like this one.
Yep.
Right? That one up there has that conventional tape.
Yep.
Now that's great because you just pop that off easily, and if you had to come in from the top, you could get in and actually service those, no drama whatsoever. The proper way of doing it is take the whole rim tape off, you put a whole new one back on. So there's a cost involved in that. These guys are running clearance, so they're still crossing the spokes.
Yep.
A notable difference is that, yeah, they've got an air gap between the spokes, so they're not using any shoulder support. Yeah, I mean, you could go really down a rabbit hole with information like this. So yes, there is. See, from a wheel building perspective, when you have something when it's touching, you do get shoulder support, so you can run a different blade of spokes. They've done 2 design differences here. They've changed the hub nut, where the spoke comes into the hub. There's a receiving nut. When you run a normal hub nut in here, or you have a normal cylindrical style spoke, they can just turn freely. So when people are doing wheel trues, or they're tensioning their spokes, or they're just riding them and they're settling, the spokes can actually move and therefore obviously change your spoke tension. So that's the old one. So it's just a normal cylindrical style head. And then the new wheels have flats machined into the top of their hub nut. So it's stopping that from twisting. They've probably done this to stop noise maybe. Maybe they've done that for their design principle. All conventional spokes, like a normal wheel.
Well, what does the ICAN have? Does that have shoulder support?
Yeah, you could go into any bike shop in the country and order, or I can custom cut spokes here. So I can make you a spoke to whatever length. You can walk in with a weird, wonderful Chinese wheel and I can make you a spoke. If you come in for this, I cannot make up a spoke on the spot. You've got to use their spokes. Do they give you spare spokes?
Yeah, they do.
They do, okay, cool.
Today's video sponsor is something a little bit different, but something I'm paying a lot of attention to, given the fact my wife Alice and I's savings are being eroded by the day because of inflation. And even during my research on the ICANs and the Winspaces, both Chinese-based companies, I ran into a lot of articles about the Chinese economy collapsing and how it could devastate the global economy. So if a bank account is losing money to inflation and markets are headed for more turmoil, then how are we supposed to make our money work for us? So we can buy more bike parts. You can do what 8 out of 10 ultra high net worth figures are already doing and look at alternative assets such as contemporary art with an average appreciation of 33% annually last time inflation was this high, outperforming gold, real estate and the S&P 500 during the same period. That is why Masterworks, today's video sponsor, is bringing contemporary art to investors without needing a huge outlay. They do all the work, including selecting the artist, they purchase the art, and they securitize it. In other words, making it investment grade. Keen to skip the Masterworks waiting list and get involved in this fine art investing straight away? Check out the link in the video description.
Bearings feel nice on this.
Okay, how do you know that?
Just on an aspect of feeling it, right? So you can kind of tell. Pop the caps off and check that in a second. So these feel pretty crap, to be honest.
Right.
They don't feel nice. You can hear it.
Can hear it, yeah.
That is notchy as hell. Again, how you're going to feel that in real world terms, you're not. You can feel it pulses. You've already got rust happening in there. So if you came into us and we were selling you this wheel, pull them out, I'd double check these kind of things, I'd grease the end of that cap, just to give it a bit of a waterproof finish. Even though you've got a sealed bearing to a degree, that water is getting in there. So if you just put a tiny bit of grease in there, it makes such a difference just from the first 6 months. So this is the one you probably use the most, right? So if you can get your eye down there, you see how much restriction there is in that bearing. It doesn't turn free. If you do that, you can kind of see a real life use.
So the original Hyper 50s, but first up, a little on Winspace's history, which I find pretty interesting. They've been around since 2008, so similar sort of age to ICAN, although I know they originated as a manufacturing company and have recently stepped up their game to be more in consumer focused. So the old Hypers, these are disc brake with a 50mm profile on each wheel, inner rim width 19mm, 26mm external.
And you could, but what would happen is you get that light bulb scenario. So if you run a bigger tire, each their own. If you're not phased about aerodynamics, if you're just doing normal riding and you're not doing your speed test or this kind of stuff, if you're just riding, there's nothing wrong with running a light bulb style where it's bulging out a little bit.
Total acclaimed weight is 1,455 grams. I weighed them in at 1,475. Proprietary carbon spokes using a 2-to-1 ratio. So we have 7 spokes on this side and 14 spokes on this side. And if you can look or see, they do this because there's less bracing angle on this side to accommodate the hub and obviously the drivetrain. And this is said to create a more efficient and stiffer rim. Additionally, on price, we have $1,200 USD and $100 USD for postage to most regions. And they do have a free option too, if you're willing to be patient.
Are you going to feel that left to right wobble like that? Probably not, but I would definitely true that wheel. So here's the spoke tensions, and all it's doing is taking the blade of the spoke, obviously releasing a pressure. What we're looking for here, I mean, every brand has a different suggested kilogram of tension. So for instance, it spits out a number, say it's 20. You look at the spoke profiling on their chart, and you can compare all their spoke tensions to where it should be in reference. Most shops would have this. If they don't, I'd be taking it from another shop. And most people could buy their own one. If you do it up too tight, you're going to crack the rim. You do it too low, you're going to end up with your spokes breaking down here.
Speed test number 2, TT like you mean it. A 1.8 kilometer false flat decline segment at 400 watts. And here it is simply too close to call.
And again, so you can look at up and down movement or concentricity as well. I can eye it off. Slightly out, but that's pretty good. You're not going to feel that. It's not really affecting anything from a real life day-to-day use. So slow, it slows down. You definitely tell the bearings aren't that good, right? You could literally just bring it into your local shop. You can knock all those bearings out, replace them with new bearings, and it'll be perfectly fine. A normal bearing's probably like 20, 25 bucks a bearing. You know, if you want something fancier, then yeah, you're going to spend probably, you know, a couple of $100 more again.
Yeah, a wag.
A wheel alignment cage, yeah. So your dish is perfect.
Thank you.
This is the older wheel, right? You've dropped no serious tension on those.
Are you saying I'm not producing enough watts?
Correct.
I'm offended. I'm leaving. Being new, these ones I've only been used a couple of times.
But you're going to get some settling, right? So with a new wheel, again, if you open those up and you don't have a reference point, you spin it, you're not going to. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's exaggerated. That's the whole point of this. It's exaggerated.
So the new Hyper D45s. Once again, disc brake, rim profile, 46mm front, 54mm rear, 21mm internal width now and a 27.6mm external. So you can now, without disrupting aerodynamics, get 28mm tyres in there. Total weight 1,421 grams, although I weighed them in at 1,450. Same spokes. Price is now $1,300 USD with the same postage options.
Bearings are a lot better than that. It spins a lot freer, doesn't it? So that's perfectly fine. So that spins way better than that one. So it's newer, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can make it.
Oh, okay. Right.
So it's ever so slightly out again on that one. Again, nominal. I mean, it's not a concern. You want it to work within 10. So it's like actually pretty good for a new wheel. That's not too bad. I would actually say it's probably out a little bit. So it's sitting drive side to the right, a little bit too far, and needs to come back to left. We're talking less than a mil. Again, nominal. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
There's a problem. So even if the wheel's just hovering, look at that. The whole axle's turning. So the bearings aren't even spinning. It's rumbling a lot.
Yeah.
So they're actually pretty good, to be honest. That's pretty good.
So a little bit about the ICANs, a Chinese-based company that specialises in manufacturing of bikes and wheels. It's been around since 2009 and in my opinion have developed quite a solid reputation. What we have here are the ICAN Aero 50 discs with 50mm depth on each rim. Inner width is a touch over 18mm, outer width 25mm. So they don't really suit anything more than a 25mm profile tyre. We have SAPM X-ray spokes, 24 front, 24 rear. They're alloy spokes. Total acclaimed weight of 456 grams and I weighed them at 450. On price, 670 USD for the wheels, although postage to Australia, 240 USD, postage to the USA, 188 USD, and postage to the UK, 155 USD. So for me, in little old Australia, these wheels are coming in at 910 USD dollars, roughly $1,300 AUD. So all of a sudden, these cheap wheels aren't coming across overly cheap. In addition, something that you should be aware of is if you have a manufacturing defect on these wheels, which have a 2-year warranty, as do the Hypers, with the ICANs, if you find the defect after 30 days, you're paying for postage.
But then the bearings have gone to shit, so
Okay, yeah.
there's no play in the bearing, right? So that your viewers know, like there's no play, it's just that they're rough, they're rumbling. So again, I mean, if I was going to budget wheel, you'd probably get those. You've got usability for the nipples, like easy to do at home. You've got normal spokes. You've got a conventional bearing that you can knock out and put new ones in and upgrade them for maybe a couple $100. You could pimp the hubs up and you put it up with a really good wheel for not much money and taking that stuff.
Yeah. How much is ICAN paying you? There'll be someone in the comments saying that. ICAN rang him up last night from China.
Okay, so this rear one's got you would true that. That one's gone out.
Right.
Compared to any brand, I don't think that's a problem. Zip, Falcon, Campy, anything. They all settle and they need to be trued slightly. So I don't see that as being a major problem. Rear bearings on this feel not too bad. Again, ever so slightly out, minimal. Passable, 100%, no drama. So serviceability wise.
Segment number 3, TT like you mean it in reverse. A 2.15 kilometre false flat incline segment where once again, too close to call, but it's speed test number 4, where I feel like I have some juice for you.
The 2 Hypers, you can just pull these off. They pop like a cork. The design on this one, you've got a lip seal here. It's a 6903 bearing, so it's a 17mm axle, 03 style bearing. So that can be replaced with any aftermarket bearing that you could find. So it has the multiple of engagements, and then you have 6 pulls. Now these are pull, P-A-W-L, and that's your pull springs. Now depending on the brand of the hub and how it works, each time it clicks, obviously, that's how it works, click, click. That multiplied by the amount of those will give you a quicker engagement. I think these have a very high engagement. Same freehub body, 6 pulls, same springs. Doesn't look like they've changed anything there. Shallower style bearing, but it's still an 03 style bearing, but it's smaller. These are not, you cannot pull this freehub easily off, so your axle is threaded together. So with this one, you will have to do some more tooling. So you got to unthread that cap, and then you push the whole thing off. You see what I mean? So it slides off that way. 3 pulls. Okay, this is where you can tell it's cheaper. This is a basic freehub body. I can also tell just from holding it, it is a lot heavier.
Right.
So even though this may be lightweight, this piece is super heavy compared to that. Even though it's different cassettes, yes, blah, blah, blah. Just from doing this all day long, you can tell the difference. This one runs a spring which runs radially around the outside. That is your pull. Obviously, you can see that working. And your spring is actually running all the way around the inside. What often happens with this type of freehub is when they get really dirty, the springs snap. That one spring is holding all 3 together. These ones here are running individual springs. So if you were to snap that spring and that pull fails, I mean, it's going to make a mess inside, but if that does fail, it tends to just drop away and then all 5 of the other ones are going to work. When this one goes, you'll find that you'll lose the engagement and it will just spin on you. From a performance perspective, that's better, but there's not really any change except for the engagements between the old and the new. And then if you look at this one, you can see this has less engagements. Not as much buzz. More manufacturing costs. There's more things going on here than there is in this one.
So speed test number 4 is a descent. 1.64 kilometers in length, averaging 5.4% gradient, where I continue my 300 watts from the previous segment into a signpost and then stop pedaling and resume the exact same descending position. the times here are clearly in favor of the Hypers, and I actually felt something happen here. The descent hits roughly 10% for a while, and there you tend to gather solid speed. Both the Hypers hit max speeds of 87 kilometers per hour. However, with the ICANs, when I was descending, I kind of felt like they maxed out at 80 kilometers per hour. Turned out to be 82 kilometers per hour, but I felt like they could have or should have kept going, and they just simply didn't. Additionally, swapping the wheels over, one big thing I noticed was the Hypers definitely feel like a stiffer, more aggressive wheel, and the ICANs feel a lot softer, making the T1500 behind me more comfortable. So ultimately it depends on what type of riding you like to do. These speed tests take me a long time to put together, so if you're getting value from this or this video, if you could give it a like, helps the channel out, I would greatly appreciate it.
Today,
You've got bikes to service.
we got stuff to do,
Yeah,
and your bill is racking up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated.
All right, mate. Have a good day.